So I'm Robin Farmanfarmaian. I am a professional speaker, author, and entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I live in Palo Alto, California, and I work on companies that are poised to impact a minimum of 100 million people worldwide. And what I do is high-level business development, and my job is essentially to have a huge network and to make sure to keep those connections and those relationships strong so that I can help my day job, the companies I work with. I typically work with medical device, pharmaceutical, and health IT, as well as some security companies. Now, the way I have built an entire network like this is by being a professional speaker. So by being an author, that helps get me on stage. By being on stage, it opens up doors to be able to build relationships all over the world.
Thank you for joining us today. In this video, we're going to be talking about collaboration and networking in business. And the person who is going to be sharing with us is Robin Farmanfarmaian. So join us to the end of the video. You have a lot to learn from her. She's an international speaker, an entrepreneur, and she's very vibrant in what she does. So you definitely have a lot to learn from her.
So networking and essentially who you know is really one of the main business reasons why business are successful. So for instance, if you are a startup company and you don't have the connections to get investors, to get employees, to get partners with corporations, to get your first customers in, then no matter how good your company is and how amazing your product is, you will fail, right? So it's connections and those relationships that really will help a business of any kind succeed.
So Robbie, my first question to you is, how did you choose your career? What were the things that influenced you in the choice of your career?
So the way I chose my career is very, very strategically. And so early on in my career, I was working here in Silicon Valley, which is very male dominated. And so it's difficult for a woman to get ahead. And I was the one who was bringing in literally millions of dollars into companies. And men were just pushing me down and taking credit for my work and sabotaging me on purpose in front of people like the CEO. And I realized I needed to change the game. There was no way that I would be able to succeed if I wasn't able to get as noticed as these men or more noticed. And so I went home one day and I created a 5-year project plan, step-by-step instructions, exactly how to become a professional speaker and author so that it would provide me with that pedestal to lift me up so that men couldn't push me down anymore. And it worked beyond my wildest dreams. It was so incredibly effective to the point where now when I feel like I'm going up one-on-one against a guy who wants to push me down in the workplace, I feel like I'm in a tank and they're on horseback. Changes the power dynamic.
All right, thank you very much for that. Looking at the situation today, if you look around, there is a lot of protests going on all over the places due to inequality. This has not just started today. It has been around with us for a long time. Tell me, how easy was it finding your own part in a male-dominated world, if we want to put it like that?
In the United States, it's well known that it's a very, very kind of prejudice and gender inequality. I mean, that's been proven over and over again. And that's one of the reasons that we're having so many protests is because minorities, immigrants, and women are frequently pushed down or kept out of the high-level success things like the C-suite or the board of directors. And so gender discrimination is very real, and it's changing because one of the main ways to change it is by getting more women and minorities up here, and then they pull others. And so just by changing the power dynamic and getting more women and minorities up into, let's say, the C-suite or the board of directors, that will gradually change things to a more equal environment. But I know this isn't just a United States problem. I mean, this is a worldwide problem, right? With the exception of the men who are literally sabotaging me and targeting me, they are the exception. All of my friends were incredibly supportive. And I mean, I saw people who I hadn't talked to in years come out of the woodwork and congratulate me. And for my second book, which is called The Thought Leader Formula, and it's literally step-by-step instructions on how to do what I did. The amount of gratitude I've gotten from women all over the world is huge. It changes their lives and really helps them, go and be successful and then pull up other women. And so it's been amazing, and it's just an incredibly supportive environment.
Thank you very much for that, dear Robin. Now, the question I want to ask you now relates to your book, The Thought Leadership Formula. In there, you said that people don't pay for content, they pay for packaging. Now, can you re-explain that part to the people who maybe have not read your book and have this opportunity to be able to learn from you?
So people don't pay for content, they pay for packaging, meaning content now with the World Wide Web is free. So for example, say you went to Stanford University and took Economics 101. Economics 101 is going to be basically the same course, whether you take it on YouTube for free, whether you take it in continuing education classes at a city college for $500, or if you take it at Stanford for $50,000 a year. It's the same content, it's packaged differently. Now take this one step further in the world of thought leadership and the internet. Imagine you have a book, right? And your book costs $10, but someone else has a series of 15 articles that says the exact same thing on LinkedIn or Medium for free. Right? It is the same content. In one case, it's worth $10 because it's packaged up in that book. And in another case, it actually is more fragmented and you have to create it yourself. Another example of this is some of these masterminds where you do interviews as a speaker, and some of those interviews go on video, out in the on YouTube, for example, for free. And then there's a paywall to be able to reach the rest of that content, right? So this is very typical. You put out 1 or 2 videos, and then if you want to see the other 10 videos of the series, you have to pay $50 to $200 or more, whatever that is. Now, the reason that costs money to be able to have the multiple videos all at once is because somebody curated that and packaged it up into a course for you so that you can actually get some value from it. So people don't pay for content. Content is free. They pay for how you package that up.
Now, you are an international speaker and a very good one for that matter. So can you tell me, how was it like for you starting out as a speaker? I mean, how was it for you to be able to stand in front of the audience of several hundreds and thousands and speak in front of them without having a stage fright?
Everybody. I mean, maybe you're 0.05% of the world's population doesn't get stage fright, but the rest of us, it is very human to get completely frightened and terrified when all of a sudden you're in front of a group of 400 or 1,000 people for half an hour and you need to entertain them. That is massive pressure. Now, add on to that, when I did my first talks, I actually was coming out as a chronic disease patient. I had hid the fact that I had had so many hospitalizations and surgeries, which I talk about now in the Patient as CEO and in my healthcare talks. And I decided to come out of the closet, as it were, as a chronic disease patient in front of all of these people who have an impact on my career. And that was terrifying. And so I knew the first few times I was going to be shaking like crazy when I got on stage. And so in order to counteract that, I practiced my first keynote over 40 times, 40. It was a 25-minute talk. That means it was a minimum of 20 hours of nonstop practice. Practiced it once to twice a day, every single day, for at least a month leading up to my talk. In addition, I hired a speaker coach for a couple of sessions, which was actually quite pricey. Speaker coaches cost a lot of money. And she recorded my session for me. And in addition, I watched that session back every day for 30 days. So I have it playing in the background so that I really knew and lived and breathed my content. So when I got on stage, and my mind would go blank, which most of ours do. That's what stage fright is. All of a sudden you're like, I can't think. I could go on autopilot and instead worry about just moving and my facial expressions versus the content, because the content was so ingrained in me at that point. I didn't have to worry about it, so I could overcome that stage fright. And now I've done over 150 talks and I have zero stage fright. All it is you just need practice. And it's those first 5 to 10 talks that are the hardest.
Now, remaining in speaking, because this is one of the most important things in business, of course, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who want to speak? So I mean, to somebody who want to start speaking as a profession, what should the person do in terms of preparation leading up to the speaking?
One thing you need to think about is that both the fact everybody has stage fright and nobody is a born professional speaker. This is a skill and it requires practice. I mean, you always hear about that 10,000 hour rule, right, to being an expert. I don't know if that's actually true, but you have to put in those hours. And so really, it's all about the extreme hard work before you ever do that first talk. It is getting that skill, because you can't just suddenly practice a talk or create, a PowerPoint presentation, practice it a couple of times and jump on stage for the first time in your life. You will fail. Absolutely. You need to build this the same way. I mean, you went to high school or college, the same way you worked for those first year or two of your day job. If you're out of school, you practiced and you worked hard. And so you absolutely have to do that before your very first talk. And if you haven't practiced 40 to 50 times before you even get in front of a person, you're not working hard enough.
Coming back to your book, I want to remain on the first few words there, which is thought leadership. Leadership is something that is very important to us today. Currently, we are under the lockdown with COVID-19. A lot of people are frightened. We don't know what the future is going to be. A lot of businesses are locked down. So leadership in a moment like this, in a time like this, is something very crucial for a lot of people, irrespective of where you are, whether you are in some advanced economy like where you are in the United States, in Africa, in Asia, or wherever you are. Leadership is something that is very important in this critical time. So what for you is a thought leadership?
So what makes somebody a thought leader is that they are a known expert by some of their peers, right? So people believe what they say and they are able to actually make an impact. One thing you can't do is you can't call yourself a thought leader. Like, you can't just suddenly say, that's my job. That's not an actual job. Other people have to name you that, right? And then you can be a thought leader. The leader of New Zealand. She's the prime minister, I believe, or president of New Zealand. She is amazing. She took control, and she's one of the people. And she really was able in this epidemic during the coronavirus on 19 to make a massive impact and to be a world leader in how to effectively and efficiently not only preserve your economy but preserve lives.
Well, remaining on the critical situation we had under COVID-19. I would like to ask one more question relating to how we are living this moment now. Because it's true that some people are completely locked down and some other are partially locked down. But of course, it affects the economy, it affects human relationship, most importantly. It affects a lot of people. So for this reason, I'm sort of key on human relations. So what I'm driving at here is, what is your take on human relation, whether in this particular moment that we are today or in business in general?
Human relationships right now and collaboration is massively important. One of the main reasons is because we are not doing a lot of things in person and we're not seeing people in person. This is a recipe for disaster. You do need to talk to other people, to have your friends around you, to have strong relationships, to have business relationships, and to interact with people, hopefully on a weekly, if not daily basis. And we know in the world of healthcare that when you do not do these things, your physical health dramatically suffers, as well as your mental health.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, now, looking back to how you started, I want to believe that at a point in your life, you have somebody you look up to, and you say, okay, I want to be like this person, or a kind of a hero who sort of encourage you to go on. Because life, of course, is difficult. We have a lot of challenges, especially when you are working on something important. So this thing, you might have encountered it. I want to believe it is true for everybody. So what I'm asking is, who was this person or these people that sort of inspired you, that encouraged you to go on in this difficult time, in this trying moment of your life that you were sort of starting up and building on your career?
My dad actually is one of my biggest influencers and my biggest hero in the world. And so that's a big deal when you can look up to your parents at the level that I do and still do. But what I do is I love anyone who is a minority or a powerful woman who has made it, right? And who helps other people. And so I actively search those kinds of people out and study them and learn some of the ways they're able to help people or some of the things that they do on stage and mimic that in a way.
All right. You see, there is something that I really want to tell you. Since the time I contacted you for this interview and the preliminary talk that we had, I sort of find it very interesting the way you are very positive. I sort of like the energy that is around you. So what is your secret? What is the secret behind this positive energy that you have?
So I have two major secrets. My first one is I work out 7 days a week. That one thing changes your neurochemistry. It changes the way your brain works. It changes what hormones are coursing through your body and really can change your mental state. And so that I work out from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., it's usually that time, 7 days a week, no exceptions, right? That is huge. Second trick I use is I get rid of toxic people as soon as I realize they're toxic in my life. And so I stay away from takers, from narcissists, or anyone who is constantly unhappy or constantly has a lot of drama. And as soon as I realize that, I just cut them out of my life. And so that type of thing does not end up touching my life.
There is something that I've been thinking. If we look at the ecosystem of business, the one word that is very important for a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of managers is competition. Competition and competition. So the question I want to ask is, should we be more in this line of competition, in this red ocean of always fighting to win, fighting to win? Or should we be more collaborative? Should we be looking for a way to work with one another so that we can all succeed? Where for business B to win doesn't necessarily mean that business A need to lose.
I always am for collaboration, especially in the world of thought leadership. If you're dealing with things like content, I believe the people who are my quote unquote competitors are actually my collaborators. And so, for instance, Dorie Clark, she is a very well-known thought leader on how to build thought leadership, right? She's in the Harvard Business Review all the time. She is a professor at Duke's master's program. And so she's just very well known and very good at her job. So I could look at her as a direct competitor or as a collaborator. And she's the one who actually wrote the quote on my cover, right? Because we know a high tide can raise all boats, right? The more you help other people, the more they will raise you up in return. Some of in the world of business, some of the big brands, right? They look at everyone else as competitors because they really are trying to dominate and sell their device or service to the world. For instance, someone like Apple. Apple doesn't collaborate necessarily with other device makers, right? Their bread and butter, their main revenue stream, in fact, they try to take it over, and they've created an ecosystem where only their stuff works with their stuff. And so I understand it from their point of view because they just want to rule the world and they're big enough to do that. But then if you're a small business, that doesn't make sense, right? If you are a much smaller than multi-billion-dollar industry business, it's better to collaborate because that other company will lift you up, right? It's very rare in an industry where only one company can be a monopoly and pretty much dominate, right? Those are only the biggest ones. Every other industry and kind of company has just small competitors, and so lift each other up. It'll help you all around.
Now, I come back to your book again, and of course, you run a business. And the question now is that for somebody who have read the book and begin to sort of think, how do I apply this formula to my business? So how do you apply the formula to your business, you that is a writer? And what can you maybe tell some other persons who have read the book in how they should apply the formula to their business?
The way to apply essentially the thought leader formula to your business or becoming an expert in your industry is really by having it help you get more power at work. So for instance, a lot of us who are behind the scenes at an office, maybe we're doing a lot of the hard work what we're doing maybe, really helps the company overall, but yet we're not getting credit for our work because guess what? We're so busy working that people don't even notice or know that we're doing it because we're head down all the time. And so by becoming an expert or a known expert, right? So you're already an expert, right? You just want people to know you're an expert. All of a sudden, people start realizing what you are doing inside of a company to help drive those business goals, and gives you much greater power on things like negotiating more of a salary, more money, negotiating a better title, a better office, right? And then take that one step further. Your expertise can help drive business goals in general by opening up doors. And I mentioned that earlier. I became a professional speaker, and now I can get into almost any door that I want to open. I can probably find a way to talk to that person, right? And so I can help directly drive business goals by being able to open up doors for things like investment funding.
Now, Robin, there are a lot of people that are watching you right now, and they probably want to hear from you a kind of advice because they want to climb in the ladder of success. They want to be like you. So what kind of advice would you give them to be able to climb up in their ladder, whether as speaker or as business owner or things like that? Probably they want to do the same thing that you have done. So I want you to leave them with advice. You choose whatever you want to tell them so that they can also succeed in their own career. Please go.
By being a thought leader, it's incredibly powerful for both you personally in terms of being able to have more power, but then in business because it can really help you achieve business goals and be successful. Now, I know a lot of you might be kind of nervous. You haven't done anything, or maybe you've posted a couple of articles or maybe some photos and you don't really understand where to start. And that's okay because most people don't know where to start. There isn't a course out there until now, of course, that will teach you how to be a thought leader the same way it would teach you, say, calculus or economics. And so go and get yourself either a coach or a book or any of the YouTube videos out there on where to start, and think about this as an actual career. Right? This is something that you are going to have to learn and work hard at. It's not going to just suddenly happen magically overnight. You've got to put in the effort, but I tell you, putting in that effort will give you more ROI, return on investment, than you probably ever dreamed possible.